thicker and like tougher. So basically the nerves, they're a whole big clump of axons with lots of connective tissues so they don't get damaged easily. So you can think of them as like a big thick wire carrying information out of the brain. So of course there's lots of nerves that go to the brain because you need input and send output to different places. So they go through those big wires, and then those nerves will split later so those axons can go where they need to go. And we've got 12 different cranial nerves. They all attach to the brain, slightly different places. And they carry different information either to the brain or away from it. So you can see them all up here. You don't have to label where they are or anything. But I do want you to know what they do. And they're actually easier than you might think, because a lot of them, their name tells you what it does. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So how about the olfactory nerve? What do you think it does? Smell. Is it taking signals to the brain or away from the brain? To the brain, right? So you already knew that. You didn't even need me to tell you that, just from its name. Optic nerve, that one's pretty obvious, right? And if you notice up here for all of them, I've either labeled them as sensory nerves or motor, and then we'll also have some that are mixed. So if it's sensory, that means signals going to the brain. If it's motor, it means all the signals are traveling away from the brain to like the muscles or something. So ocular motor, what does that one sound like? It's your eye, because ocular is eye. Motor, it's a motor neuron then. So it moves your eyelid. Maybe you did some pupil. I saw some people do some pupil testing yesterday. So it kind of, and it also moves the lens of your eye too, to help you focus far away and close up. All right, and then we have our trochlear nerve. This is a motor neuron that moves some different eye muscles. Superior oblique. Then the trigeminal nerve is a mixed one. So it takes sensory information from, what's this word anterior mean again? So the front, so like the front of your scalp, your face, oral cavity, kind of this area. So any of those senses that are there, not your vision and smell, but like the skin, like touch and stuff. And then it's a motor neuron. It has motor neurons for your muscles of mastication or chewing. And you have an abducens, which is another motor neuron, and it just controls a few eye muscles. So if you notice, we've got quite a few. It's kind of interesting. You'd think there should just be one, but that's not how we evolved to be for some reason. Facial nerve. This is mixed as well. So it does taste, so it'd be the sensory portion, and then your facial expression muscles controls those. Vestibular cochlear, that's hearing with sensory. So it's a sensory nerve, and it also does your sense of equilibrium. Because as you may know, you have special air that help you tell whether you're leaned too far forward or back, which is of course why when you get a really bad sinus infection and pressure builds up there, you start to feel like kind of imbalanced. And you all felt that before? Or vertigo too. So that's the nerve that takes all that information from the inner ear to the brain. All right, so we got our vagus nerve. It's mixed. And if you notice, that's a lot of sort of internal organ stuff. So it's sending information about the heart, the lungs, the abdominal organs. And it's also a motor neuron, so sending signals back out to change the heart rate or increase intestinal secretion, something like that. The vagus nerve, we have accessory nerve, trapezius and sternocleidomastoid muscle, hypoglossal, one nerve just for your tongue muscles. Interesting. All right, so just to review those, shouldn't take too long, is the last question on that worksheet, which I'll pull up in case somebody doesn't have it. And that's just going to be describe one symptom a person might have if each of those nerves are damaged. Like, let's say you were some crazy mad doctor and you just went in there and cut that one nerve. What would happen to the person? So you can use the PowerPoint, you can use your group. I'm just going to set the... do y'all just want to all come up here for today? Since we've got somebody all by herself. Or y'all, I thought y'all wanted to be closer to the front.
No.
Not anymore?
I chose out of
Oh no. Okay, would you like to join them back there? So you have a group? Okay, cool.
Do you have any more lists?
I have one. Oh, and I can pull it up too.
Do you need this one or can I have it?
You can have it. Okay, so if you don't have yours, there's the list of nerves.
For the olfactory,
Uh-huh.
would be the smell, so would it be like no sense of smell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sinus?
It's mostly just the sensory of, like, sense of smell information. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these are pretty easy, right?
So you want it like that simple?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Just a quick, it's supposed to be a quick, like, 5-minute thing just to get you to look over what they do, you know?
It's got to do with the eye.
Yeah. Talking about the vagus nerve. Yeah, I gotta think wouldn't be good. I think you would actually, well, I don't know. I think you'd Um, so that Vegas size activity of those things, but they still would keep working somewhat. But you definitely, I mean, you might have like a high heart rate, or yes, a constipation or something. Lose some important control over those organs.
What's the lateral rectus eye muscle and the oblique eye muscle? Like, do we need to know which?
You don't need to worry about it. You could just say eye muscles.
Okay.
I don't even know, actually. I have to look them up. Let's see. So the lateral rectus moves your eye like side to side, and then your oblique one moves it like back up and down, or rotates. Yeah, whatever this movement would be called, little rotation up and down. Well, isn't the eye rolling kind of like this? Yeah. Well, I was thinking eye rolling. Yeah, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Thinking
Like real rolling.
attitude eye rolling.
Me too. That's what I was thinking about. Because I think that would be both. Yours was good. Yeah. She's like, "Oh." I do it involuntarily sometimes. It's got me in a lot of trouble before. Turns out people in authority / your wife or parents don't like when you roll your eyes at them. Did you just roll your eyes? No. I just blinking, you know. Wouldn't that be weird if you didn't ever have facial expressions? Like you couldn't smile, like you just couldn't. Be strange.
I was watching Grey's Anatomy, and this girl, she couldn't stop herself from blushing.
Oh, I
So they
remember
had to
that.
fix that.
Really?
So she'd blush all the time. So you'd know when she
Anytime, yeah.
somebody.
Excited or very.
Cool. She'll get some for all of them then.
That's the last one.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I don't think we need to go over those. I trust that you came up with something reasonable for all of them. Just supposed to be a slightly more interesting way to go over their functions than just what's the function of each of them. All right. So I didn't make a quiz for today, but is there anything you had questions about?
Will all this be kind of touched on today? No?
Not all the bold stuff. So if there's anything from the bold you weren't sure on, you should definitely ask about it. Yeah.
For C, that describe the major response of the following organs to the stimulation by the
Yes.
pathway. I didn't know the coronary arteries.
Uh-huh. So the coronary arteries one, it's actually on, I could tell you the answer, but there was a second page to that table. I don't know if you noticed, but it is dilation. Do I? Well, it would have to be one of them. So it'd be either relaxation, because you want more blood to the brain if you're in fight or flight. So you could either say relaxation or dilation. The other one's going to be the opposite, yeah. And then I'll just go through those other ones, just in case, because people have had trouble with them in the past. So remember, basically today is all sympathetic nervous system, which is mostly fight or flight response. The parasympathetic, that's next time. So we'll see that later. So heart rate, to increase heart rate and force of contraction. It tells the liver to break down glycogen and release glucose into the blood. It tells the pancreas to produce glucagon. And also to secrete less digestive enzymes. And then for the stomach and intestines, less secretions and less smooth muscle contraction. Because if you've got a lion coming to eat you, you don't need to worry about digesting your food and storing energy for weeks from now. You need to worry about not being dead, not being eaten. Smooth muscle contraction. Because everything through your GI tract is smooth muscles squeezing the digested food along. So if you slow down the squeezing, then it goes slower. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sympathetic and parasympathetic.
What about the two stimuli that activate?
So for that one, you could have come up with all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
What are two that you found?
I just put physical or emotional. So
Physical or emotional?
physical or emotional stress.
Okay, yeah.
Then if
So
you wanted more specific.
I think if it was on an exam or something, maybe like a specific situation, like, loss of blood or being startled by something. Somebody wants to fight you. I don't know. Basically anything that causes you physical or emotional stress would activate it.
Can you do autonomic ganglion?
Yeah, so first, what is a ganglion?
Collection of neuronal bodies.
So it's a collection of neuron cell bodies. So an autonomic ganglion, that's a cluster of neuronal cell bodies that's part of the autonomic nervous system. I have that on the next one too. Right. And then the preganglionic neuron is the one before the ganglion. The post is the one after the ganglion. Where did I put that? Oh, it's right here. All right. All right, so let's start with some basics about our autonomic nervous system. So first off, let's kind of orient ourselves a little bit about how this is all connected together functionally. So we just got done doing all the central nervous system stuff, right? Brain and spinal cord. But obviously all those signals, they need to be sent out to the rest of the body. And then the signals need to, get from your fingertips back to the spine or the brain. So we've got the somatic nervous system, which we're not really going to do too much with, but that's like your sensory receptors and then voluntary skeletal muscles. You could, voluntarily control. That's the somatic. What we're working on is the autonomic. So if you notice, there's also sensory receptors in this one, but these aren't your conscious sensory receptors. So these are the ones that, tell your brain how much CO2 is in your blood or something. Personally, I don't perceive that. Can anyone tell me what percentage of CO2 is in their blood? Is their body telling them that and they know? It would be really crazy if you somehow knew, like at this moment, the exact percentage. You may know the average. But your brain does know at all times how much oxygen, how much CO2, all these things. It just doesn't tell your cerebrum about it. It just adjusts things to fix any problems. Also, your body temperature. That's monitored by the autonomic nervous system. And then, so that's like, the sensory neurons sending information to the central nervous system. And then the second half of it is the motor neuron part. That's most of what today is. And that's divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic halves. So these are mostly involuntary signals coming from the brain and the spinal cord. So could be going to smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, or glands. It's probably where they mostly go to. All right. So as I mentioned, the autonomic, that's input from sensory receptors that aren't conscious. So they're in your organs, your blood vessels, your muscles in different places. Now, one thing that I think is a little confusing is how all this gets turned on, because it's not conscious. So you're not telling the sympathetic nervous system to be activated. It is your brain, but not the conscious part. So the main part of your brain is the hypothalamus that controls it. So the hypothalamus takes in information from all those sensory receptors out in your body, from your cerebrum, and then from the amygdala. Do you remember what that one did? What it was? So anger, strong emotions. As I'm sure you've noticed, if you get really mad, what happens to your heart rate? Does it go up? Does your skin get red? Because your blood vessels dilate and everything. If you're really excited, that's all coming from the amygdala, telling the hypothalamus, which is activating the sympathetic nervous system. So it's sending that input down the spinal cord and then connecting to all the neurons that went all throughout. So mainly hypothalamus, and then our secondary input is from the cerebral cortex, so your thoughts, the medulla, and the amygdala too. I'm gonna put this up here. So you've got and then everything telling hypothalamus. Do you remember what the medulla oblongata did? I'll give you a hint, it's not what was in Waterboy. So if you remember, it helped regulate respiratory rate, heart rate, and for the most part, it does that through the hypothalamus. And I guess we could put this on here too, even though we're not working on it today. All this applies for the parasympathetic too. All these are involved. So the hypothalamus decides, activate this one and this one, just activate sympathetic. That's basically how they get sympathetic. So we'll keep that up there. All right, so what do you think an example is of the cerebrum, which is, well, you know what that is by now, modifying the autonomic nervous system? All right, so go ahead and chat with your group there. If you do think it's E, which most of you do, be prepared to tell us which ones. So as you're discussing things, what does your cerebrum do in general?
Conscious thoughts, isn't it?
Yeah, so your cerebrum is all your conscious thoughts. That's kind of your clue there. All right. All right, how about some final votes? All right, so a lot of people switched to C, and C is actually the only correct answer up there. And that's because basically all of those up there are the autonomic nervous system, all four of those, but only one of them, C, has anything to do with a conscious thought. Right? So you're actually consciously telling yourself to think about something relaxing and changing your heart rate through less sympathetic nervous system activity. And that's actually something we're going to test in lab to see how many of you can actually change your heart rate or blood pressure. We'll decide which one to do consciously. Because you do have some control over it, right? Like, for example, what's another way you could kind of slow down your breathing and heart rate? Anybody held their breath underwater before? Do you feel like you kind of like consciously slowed down everything a little bit? That was you slowing down your heart rate. It's kind of cool. Really? Oh, you're probably not very good about holding your breath and can't stay down there for long. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get into quite a bit of the anatomy of this, how it's all connected. And the first thing to remember is that for the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic, but we're just talking about sympathetic for now, it's 2 neurons in a series, just like one wire connected to another wire going to the final destination. And if you remember sympathetic, this is all motor neurons, so all the signals are going away from the spinal cord towards whatever tissue you're heading to. Let's see, I should pass this out. Let me go ahead and pass this out and then we'll talk about it. I think it makes more sense. I'm sure you saw this diagram in the book and just flipped past it and didn't want to look at it. I know I didn't want to look at it the first time I saw it. So the first thing, make sure you're on the sympathetic side in blue. And if you look on there, do you see some of the blue lines are solid and some of them are dashed? So the solid lines, do you think those are pre or post ganglionic neurons? They're the pre. So put that up here. That's the pre-ganglionic. And then our dotted one. And the second thing to notice on there is, as you know, neurons, what are the 2 different sides of a neuron, or the 2 ends? Right, it's the dendrite and the axon terminal. So on there, the circle thing represents the dendrite, and this thing represents the axon terminal. And what's it called when an axon terminal meets a dendrite? What's that space? That's like the synapse or synaptic cleft. So on there, anytime you see a dendrite meeting an axon terminal, that's a synapse. And that would be where the pre and the post neuron meet. And for the most part, our preganglionic neuron, it connects like the spinal cord to the postganglionic neuron. And then the postganglionic neuron connects the preganglionic neuron to the target tissue. And you can kind of see that on here, how all the solid lines end before they get to the tissues. And they switch over to that next wire, like the next signal. Where are these? Let's see. All right. So for this one, just looking for kind of some simple neurons before we get into the detail. Yeah. So what we're looking for here is kind of like what you did on the lab practical yesterday. Pretty much the same, a little bit simpler. So you're going to draw and label a pre and a post ganglionic neuron, just in series. And then 2 and 3 are just a few more labelings. And you actually don't need that first thing I passed out yet for that. Just 2. So let me know if you need some markers there. And I'll put this slide back up so it kind of reminds you of where those neurons are going. Extra markers. Here you go. There's one. Oh, there's like. There you go. Wherever. Anyone else need any? Good. You might want to do it on the table first, unless you're positive about everything. Actually, I think you don't need to use that. Looking for something simpler than that. Just like how 2 neurons are connected together. Which one's pre, which one's post, and then you've got 2 other things. I really shouldn't have passed that out already. That's my fault. So now you're going to think it needs to be complicated. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you'll label them pre and post. And then you've got a few other things to label after you get them drawn. But yeah, basically we did in the lab practical yesterday. It's the exact same thing.
Like how we did it yesterday with the little.
Like yesterday. So yeah. Right.
So are these like the axons?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, I was getting confused.
I know.
The axon sending like
Right.
the sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, not the sensory, the other thing. Like telling these organs to do stuff.
Okay.
Like increase heart rate. There's a better one, maybe. I don't know. Your blue marker looks kind of sad. No, yours looks good. Adriana's looks kind of sad. All right, and then, so you got the pre, you got the post, and then you do 2 and 3 too. Right, and then question 2 and 3, it's gonna have you label a few more things on there. But that looks good so far.
Right? So this would start from the spine, this is a pre,
Uh-huh.
and then it would just go to like the liver
Yeah,
or
that's right.
something like that. This is a post.
Right, and so then you just need to label the axon terminals and the dendrites. I think you got it backwards. Because remember the axon terminal is what sends the signal. So like this is the dendrite receiving the signal. That's the axon terminal, and then that's the dendrite on that one. So the preneuron, preganglionic, has the axon terminal telling the dendrite of the post.
This is an axon?
Axon terminal, yeah.
Like that?
And then you've got a few more questions for 2 and 3, but. Oh, and then at the liver there, that's another axon terminal. And this is the dendrite down here. Are you talking about 2 or 3? 2. Okay, well, where in your picture do the pre and the post meet?
So,
Oh, you already labeled it.
yeah. So
Yeah.
would it be down here? Right here? Okay.
The only thing to include, it does include that cell body of the post.
Okay.
Did you label the pre and the post?
We're doing that now.
Oh, which one's
So this is pre, post.
yeah,
Okay.
so we're gonna label those.
Okay.
So is there like one pre, one post, one pre, one post? Like in one whole thing, or is it just when they meet?
When they meet,
You're talking about what circle? The ganglion?
I don't know, I'm talking about where they are at.
Oh, in the body?
Yeah.
Well, you can glance at this one. You can kind of see. So any place where you see a dashed line turning into a solid line,
That's where
they meet. So depending on where the signal's going, it could be in this trunk here, or it could be way down, you know, in this thing. It just kind of depends. And it includes the cell body, the ganglion,
okay. Does it include the dendrites?
and the synapse.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, see where that circle's coming from.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, I get it now.
So this circles, I know, this is like a big pile of those,
Okay.
like a million of those cell bodies. And I would say that's the ganglion.
Oh, ganglion.
This whole thing is the post, all the way down.
Okay.
But that's the ganglion itself. This is the postganglionic neuron,
Okay.
the whole thing.
Okay.
And this whole thing, from here to there, is the preganglionic neuron.
Oh.
Right? It includes the dendrite, includes the axon.
We have the pre, the post, the
Yeah.
action terminals, dendrites,
hmm
and the autonomic ganglion right here.
Yeah, you're close. The ganglion does include the cell body. So you're right, it's where they connect, but then it also goes around the cell body. But otherwise, you're right, and then that's the ganglion. Where's this in the body?
The dendrites, I think it's in the brain or spinal cord.
For sympathetic, it's in the spinal cord.
Spinal cord.
So you can see where all the pre-neurons start. And then where's this?
Any, I don't know, probably can be any organ.
Yeah,
Stomach.
could be any organ. You're right. All right, so did you figure out where all those are?
I think so.
So when you say CNS, I just assume you mean spinal cord, basically.
Is it that or the brain?
For the sympathetic, it's just the spinal cord.
Just spinal cord?
The parasympathetic, you'll see, is a little different, but
And you said this, I had overheard you saying the sympathetic ganglion includes the cell body of the
Right.
post?
yes.
Okay.
Wait, does yours? I feel like there's something missing from your second neuron.
It's
Well, we just
just has a really short.
Where's its axon terminal and its axon?
It's right here. It's just really short. My hand.
No, I mean that's its dendrite.
Oh, it's down on that one.
We just didn't continue.
Oh, so it needs to keep going to the organ that it goes to. Do
Oh, okay.
you know what I mean?
Yep. So does it just go around the body but not the axon?
It includes, yeah, so it'd be like dendrite directly to cell body and then the axon.
So I'd continue to the axon then?
I mean, what does the sympathetic ganglion include? You said it includes where they connect?
The dendrite, the terminal, and the cell body.
Okay, so it does not include the axon.
Right. The axon would be outside of it. Right.
Okay.
All right.
As ours looks good.
Oh, you erased yours already.
Sorry, you can see it.
Nice drawing. Oh, I don't care. Pre in the spine. So looks good. The ganglion includes this whole part. It's like you drew like a circle right here. That'd be where the ganglion is. Yeah, so you're good. And then your dendrites in the spine. So y'all got it.
Like that.
Yep. Who didn't I check? Yours. Yeah. Oh, I gotta think. Okay, so yours starts, down here. It is the dendrite in the spinal cord.
Wait, I did it backwards, huh?
Yeah.
That should have been down here and that should have been up here.
Where's, right, yeah, I think it's all backwards.
I did it backwards.
Because the dendrite's the receiving end,
Oh my god.
and it's in the spinal cord. So it'd go dendrite, cell body, axon terminal.
So this would be like this.
Yeah, so I think,
And then this is the dendrites.
and the cell body too is down there. You have yours right?
Spinal cord, target area.
Yeah, you got it. Yours three. Yeah, and that's because these nerves are designed to send signals from the spinal cord to the organs. If you were looking at like sensory something, then it'd be like you drew it.
And like right here, where the signal touches, it's this, right?
And this one's backwards too, right? A lot of people do. Don't worry. Everybody's got it. So you got your pretty picture copied down on this. And then your cell body should be right next to the dendrite for each of them. All right, so nice drawing skills out there. So let's keep going for sympathetic a little bit. So one of the weird things that you notice about this is it look like there's like 3 spinal cords or something. So this is a little bit strange and confusing, but the sympathetic nervous system has a whole bundle of neuron axons and stuff running next to the spinal cord, very close to it, but outside of the bony encasing, the actual spinal column. And it does run left and right sides. And one of the important functions it has is obviously, do you remember we said the spinal cord only goes from T1 to L2? And do you see on that diagram there, we want to send some neurons up above T1, like to the heart or to your eyeballs, to your mouth, all that stuff. So that trunk provides a place for those axons to go up. So they can leave the spinal cord and go up and then get close to the eyes before they have to leave. So it kind of provides a protected, somewhat protected place. Same thing for them to go below L2. So down to your bladder and everything else down there. I've got another picture. And if you were to zoom in a little bit, you'd see the vertebrae, and then this would be, you know, the spinal cord itself. So that'd be the dendrite of the preganglionic neuron, and then it comes out, and here's the trunk running right next to the spinal cord. So you could have a synapse there with the next neuron, or you could just come out and go up or go down. Like the axon could just kind of go up or down there. And the only other thing to explain about this one is they're showing you just half of it. Because obviously, do you think maybe on the other side you have a kidney too? So you certainly have everything that they're showing on the right side, on the left side. And the skin that they're showing, that's all throughout on both sides too. Just trying to keep it. They wanted to keep it nice and simple for you, right? It's a nice simple diagram. All right. So I think we talked all about that pretty well. It's a little tiny up here, but I do want to remind you that anywhere where there's a bunch of pre and post neurons meeting, that's a synapse. And when it's a bunch of them together, it's called a ganglion. So these little blue circles, like for example, the renal ganglion, that's where a bunch of the signals coming from the pre-neuron meet a bunch of post-neurons. Because obviously, do you think you just have one neuron telling the kidney what to do? Or do you think it's a whole big network of them? So it's like a big clumpy network. They all meet here, and then the postganglionic neurons go from there to here. And then the last one, if there's a bunch of pre and post meeting in the trunk, it's called a sympathetic trunk ganglion. And if it's out here, it's a prevertebral ganglion, something like that. Is that the wrong way? All right. And it should be pretty obvious so far, but when you're looking at that diagram, the cell bodies and the dendrites of all the preganglionic neurons are in the spinal cord. And you can tell that because, remember, our dendrites are the dots, and the preganglionic neurons are the dark or the filled in lines, and they all start in the spinal cord. So the two ganglia. One thing to mention before we keep going, I think this is often a little confusing. Where does the signal actually start for the sympathetic nervous system? Does it start at the spinal cord, or does it start somewhere else? Do you remember what controls the whole system? Yeah, so the hypothalamus in the brain. So all these little neurons down here in the spinal cord, they're getting signals from the hypothalamus down to the spinal cord. It's just that's part of the central nervous system, so they don't draw it on here. But that is what's turning all these different neurons on. All right, so we've got the two different ganglia. Like we mentioned, the ones in the trunk are called the trunk ganglia. The ones basically outside of the trunk, so all those little blue circles on there, those are your prevertebral ganglia out there. What again? 3? I think I mean 4. All right. So with your group there, we're going to try to get, I want to know how signals get from the spinal cord to each of those tissues. So basically just, can you read this diagram? And double check your neighbor. Make sure all of your neighbors are looking at the sympathetic nervous system with the blue lines. If you see anyone looking at red lines, they're probably going to have a hard time. Be very confused. And one other thing, there may be more than one answer to some of these, which is okay. So as you're doing these, you probably want to be writing something like, the preganglionic neuron goes from here to here. Postganglionic neuron goes from here to here. What the name of the ganglia? Yeah, because that's where it goes to. Well, I guess that's the same. Yeah, the same thing. Both of them.
So you want, so like this one starts at T12 and.
And it goes, right? That's where the pre goes, and the post goes from the ganglion to. Well, getting close. I think I want to know what's between these two. So like the preganglion, it goes from the spinal cord, and then it goes somewhere and meets this one. Where does it meet the post for a liver? Yeah, you can include the nerve. You don't have to, as long as you have the celiac ganglion.
So put this, the celiac ganglion.
Right, right, because that's where it meets the post.
Is that one with the name different? Because that one doesn't have a name for it. Is that one the celiac too?
Yeah, so that blue circle, that's the celiac ganglion.
So it went from this to that to that to the
Mm-hmm. So the pre goes from T, what is that, 5?
T5 to the whatever that word is,
Yeah.
nerve, and then from there.
And then it
To
meets
the-
the post at
Oh,
the
yeah, to the
celiac
post.
ganglion.
The celiac, okay.
All right, how are y'all doing so far? So you do need to have in there like, which, because that is, the path. I was hoping to see where the pre-ganglion neuron goes and then where the post goes. So like for the liver, the pre-neuron goes from where to where? The pre-ganglionic.
It goes from like T5
Uh-huh.
to the greater. Oh shoot.
Yeah, right?
To the greater, what? I'm talking
I
about, or
can
whatever. it is. So like
To the
this and
celiac ganglion,
Okay.
right? And that's where the pre goes. And then the post goes from the celiac ganglion to the liver.
The liver.
See what I mean?
Okay.
So we're,
So from this liver to halfway in it. Oh, so it's not
right.
the nerve.
But making sure to say the pre goes here, post goes here. And it's fine if you just pick like from one place of the spinal cord, because obviously you can't really tell, right? For some of them. So as long as you have one of them. And you're going to write something about pre and post ganglionic neurons on there. All right, so are y'all writing stuff about pre and post?
No. We're supposed to write that? Like from where it starts?
Yeah, so like the preganglionic neuron goes from here to here.
But doesn't it start with
Well, it starts in different places, right? Like T1, T5, T7.
But first, they would start with post and then go to pre.
You just told me it backwards.
Really?
Pre comes first. It's
So
they're
it goes-
labeled up here.
So from the heart is the one that sends.
Oh, so for the sympathetic, it's always going from the spinal cord to the organ.
So how is it not like post?
Well, it has.
No, it's pre.
It starts at pre. Yeah. So for maybe we should do the liver
Yeah.
first.
So it go pre to post.
So actually, what you have right here, this would be the pre-neuron does this, and then what does the post-neuron do? The post-ganglionic neuron.
Once it connects to this, the celiac
So then it goes from the celiac ganglion to
post. Right? Oh, well, it goes to the liver.
right. Yeah. So you could say pre goes. The pre-ganglionic neuron does this, which would be exactly right, and then the post goes from celiac ganglion to the liver, and then you'd be done.
It was really long.
Yeah.
So like so confusing. Okay. So for the urinary bladder,
Uh huh.
it starts off right here, right?
Oh, it actually starts here.
Oh, it does?
So those ones all come off of L3?
Yeah. I think it's a little hard to tell exactly, but I would say L3. And then it goes down the sympathetic trunk.
Okay, and then from
So I'd
there-
say it goes from the pre goes from L3 to a sympathetic trunk ganglion, and then the post goes from sympathetic trunk ganglion to the bladder. Or is that the one we're doing?
goes from to this one.
Oh yeah, you could add that in there too.
Yeah, do we need to add that? I think that's the question.
No, because it's not a ganglion,
Oh,
but
okay.
I mean it wouldn't be wrong if you put it on there.
So the plexus and the nerves, we don't necessarily have to add.
No, I think just stick with the ganglion.
Okay.
Yes.
Any of these things?
Yeah, it could be any of those, right? Because it's got stuff coming from all over.
Is the very bottom one the pre-vertebral or is it the all the
This little thing. Just like what I said.
Did you just draw that?
What?
Is that on there?
Yeah, it's on there.
Oh, that's the ureter. That has nothing to. That's not the neurons or anything. That's funny that they thought they should put that on there because nothing else is connected,
Oh, it's not.
right? Well, it's
But
funny
there's
because
little things connected to it. See?
yeah, controlling the flow of urine. I guess that's why it's on there.
Oh, okay.
I never really looked. I never really noticed that before.
Yeah.
for the bottom one? Is that the plexus, this one? Or the meat?
Well, where did it start? That's where the post started. Where did the pre start? L3, right? So it's a little hard to tell, but what happened was that pre-neuron came out, went to the trunk, went down, and met the post in the trunk.
But what
The
is
bladder.
this blue? Because they're all ganglion, but
Yeah, it's a
it's the plexus.
it's a cluster of neurons. If I had made this thing, I wouldn't put that on there because all the other blue things are ganglions. Yeah,
So the prevertebral is above.
right.
So does the kidney have a lot, or is it just one?
No, it's got a bunch. So I can see at least.
So even like these right here, or the top part and this little
Well,
part?
the very top one is actually going to the adrenal
Oh,
gland,
okay.
but yeah, those two,
Just one, or just those two?
Those
Not-
two.
Okay.
because those other ones are going to the ureter.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, there's nothing to. All right, does it make any more sense?
Do we need to include this gland from all the way up here?
Uh,
Adrenal gland
And
For what,
this
for
in-
D?
In the ureter?
for the kidney.
Mm-hmm.
not for the kidney,
Just the
because it's not
kidney?
part of the kidney.
So just the kidney we need to have, right? Not this.
Well, what did you write for the kidney? For C.
I put T10 to T12.
Okay, and then do they go to some ganglion somewhere?
Yes, to this one, the
Mm-hmm.
renal ganglia.
And you're right for the kidney. There's actually two places, so the one you have there is right too,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yes.
Because that would be like this one that came over there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the pre, and then the post neuron went from that ganglion to the. That's what you need to add.
Okay, and then this is a separate.
That would be another answer for the
Another-
kidney. Fine. There's our bladder down here. It actually starts. To the bladder. You don't need to worry about the plexus. neurons going there. So as long as you're that, and one of these ganglions, either inferior, middle, kind of with that diagram. You're looking solid. Oh, and if you're also on here, the too. Oh, the bladder. No. Bladder A. Is the one there. Came here, and it had its synapse at the trunk. Right? Because that's where the solid line ended. Through the trunk without meeting the neuron. Yeah. Oh. The adrenal gland is D. Because if you notice, solid line all the way. Which is an axon, or wait, sorry,